Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.
The Sparkfile podcast may contain profanity and other adult content.
Please use your discretion.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Welcome to the Spark File, where we believe that everyone is creative, but smart creative people don't go it alone.
I'm Laura Camion.
And I'm Susan Blackwell, and we are creativity coaches who help people fear less, create more, and bring their creative visions to life.
If you're an OG member of the Sparkfile community, welcome back, Sparkler.
If you're joining us for the first time, welcome, friend.
Know that just by listening to this podcast, you are joining a warm and wonderful clan of creatives.
You may be asking yourself, what exactly is a Spark File?
A Spark File is a place where you consistently collect all of your inspirations and fascinations.
If you're like us and you're making stuff all the time, or you want to be making stuff all the time, you know if you're not careful, your campfire of creativity can flicker out.
But do not despair, friend. We're collecting kindling in the form of fresh ideas, images, and inspiration that spark creativity and pique curiosity.
To light a fire under our collective asses to make things like, for instance, this very podcast.
Or a story filled with historical intrigue and leaps of faith.
This episode has Laura Camion written all over it.
Historical intrigue, did you say?
Yes.
Leaps of faith, did you say? Every episode, we're going to reach into our spark files and exchange some sparks. And from time to time, we're going to talk to some folks who spark us too.
That means we have more sparks than we can possibly use in this lifetime.
So if something lights you up, we beg you, we implore you, please take that thing and make something out of it.
Without further ado, let's open up
The Spark File.
I think we just have to name it, Laura. We just have to name it.
I'm with you.
Laura sounds like Brenda Vaccaro. Didn't Brenda Vaccaro famously do voiceover for feminine hygiene products? Hi, I'm Brenda Vaccaro. You have been a little under the weather, and we have been postponing this recording while you get your, because you sound good.
This is the good version, friends.
But you sound great.
Oh, well, thank you. It doesn't sound great to me. It sounds squeaky. And like the more excitable I get, the less I can actually make sound.
I want to get you wound up and see what sort of sounds come out.
Like things come out of me that I'm like, what was that? So I'm going to try to stay calm. But yeah, I had a respiratory infection. I've not had COVID, to my knowledge. And so when this came about, I was like, oh, well, this must be it. But it was not COVID. It was just a friendly, everyday neighborhood respiratory infection.
Well, we're glad you're back sitting up and taking nourishment.
Thanks, baby.
As my manager, Dale Davis, used to say, darling, you're sitting up and taking nourishment.
Oh,
Yeah, when you feel better after being sick.
nice.
Mm-hmm.
Dale Davis.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes she would just use it as a figure of speech. Like if you'd say, Dale, how you doing today? She'd say, darling, I'm sitting up and taking nourishment.
Here we go. That's nice. I
Yeah. She
remember
was like, it
saying
was like having Leslie Jordan as a manager.
that.
Laura Camion.
Yeah, babe.
It's so funny because I have these little sparks that I thought about like just sparking you with a sparklet off
Yeah.
the top.
Yeah.
But I'm nervous because I'm like, oh, maybe I should put them into a bigger spark.
Oh, hold on to those. Hold on to those because for a couple of reasons. One, I think my story
You need the
is
time?
rich and full.
Okay. Historic intrigue, you say.
Yeah. And also, I've got a mini spark that I want to share with you.
What is it? What is it? I'll take a sparklet.
So it's a mini spark that related to the Let's Talk About Death Over Dinner that you did just a couple weeks ago.
Oh, yeah?
I found an article that I'm going to send to you. It's National Geographic, and it is about green funerals, the eco-friendly afterlife. And it really outlines these 3 different ways. And I don't know if you knew, but earlier this year, New York State became just the 6th state in the nation to legalize something called human composting.
Oh, yeah. I'm interested in that.
Yeah. So it's legal in New York.
Did we talk about that? I can never remember what I think, what I say.
A little bit. We just brushed on it. Yeah.
I'm really into that human. It's called, instead of cremation, it's called.
There's a few things. There's human composting, the mushroom suit, which apparently like actor Luke Perry did that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And Archbishop Desmond Tutu chose to be cremated not by flame, but by water in a process called alkaline hydrolysis. So there's like, this is all in this article, these 3 different ways that you can be buried in an eco-friendly way.
I am into it. I had this as a whole spark, but as you know, if you listen to the podcast, I limit myself to 1 death-related spark per season just because I don't want to freak you all out.
We try. We really try.
But I have a whole pocket of my spark file dedicated to this very topic. I like the composting one because I really love the idea of getting back essentially a very large bucket of soil that you could use to plant flowers or vegetables. Or
Absolutely.
I will be a beautiful herb garden.
I want to be a big old oak tree.
Nice.
Well, this rolls right into my spark because
all right,
for all of the death-related sparks in your spark file,
you have history sparks.
There is a buried treasure spark in mine.
Oh, nice. A buried treasure spark.
Every single one. I swear, ever since you did that spark about armchair treasure hunters.
Yes.
And I've been trying to keep myself from doing literally 1,000 sparks about buried treasure like every season. Oh, I did do one. I did one about the treasure hidden in the Scottish Highlands.
Yes.
After I watched that documentary called Garnet's Gold.
That's right.
But I have almost shared a found treasure spark about 100 times. Like it could be ancient shipwrecks, which I have 1,000 of those in my spark file. Or even like how they found like a medicinal bug in the Amazon, that could cure us all of cancer. Or they found dinosaur bones in a school playground, or
so all the different types of treasure.
Finding treasure, finding a Picasso at a garage sale. Like I have so many of these.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Laura, you must censor yourself.
Just parse them out slowly over time.
Yes.
And today's our lucky day, it seems.
Today's your lucky day because I went ahead and I did one. Now, of all those treasures we talked about, of course, there's a big difference between an accidental find or a find of coincidence or a find of opportunity. Like you happen to be at the Goodwill and you really know your Renaissance painters. So when you saw this Da Vinci sketch, you had a feeling it was something special. So you spent the $10 to find out if it was anything. That's very different from someone so convinced that they know where a Spanish shipwreck went down like in the 1600s and hiring a team of divers and equipment to go salvage it, etc.
Right.
That kind of story is sometimes triumphant and sometimes tragic. And today, I've got a story that is a bit of a mix of both.
Nice. I was thinking today as I was writing the spark that I'm going to share with you on the next episode, how, sometimes we do sparks that are just sort of like, here's what these researchers have found about, and those are great. And sometimes they help us understand how to live. But man, do I love a story spark where I'm just sort of like, all right.
It's just like sit down and hear a tale.
Yeah, I'm ready for a tale.
I'm glad you like it, Suze. But I do think like creatively, there's so many juicy sparks within tales like this that can be realized in so many different ways if it so moves you. So I invite you, listeners, listen, and take any of this that is of interest and run with it. Okay, so I'm going to start here. The thing responsible for this spark is an article in Popular Mechanics by David Howard.
Now, what are you doing poking around Popular Mechanics?
Thank you. That's right. Popular Mechanics. Sparks are everywhere, friends.
Did you used to get that subscription to your house because of your dad?
Well, we might have actually, but I'm not a big reader of it. I'll admit. But I saw the headline on this and I was like, that story is for me.
Online?
Uh-huh.
Got it. When I think of Popular Mechanics, I think of a subscription that came to our house. I can see the logo incredibly clearly.
Yep.
My dad got it because that's what dad's got.
I feel like I quoted Popular Mechanics like in some book reports and things, like I really do.
That's what was laid around the house. Sure.
So listen, today, the hero of our story is perhaps an unreliable narrator. And I need to tell you that up front. But here's what we know about our hero, Chad Summers.
Chad Summers, you say?
Chad Summers is now 44 years old. He grew up in Central Ohio.
Yes.
Your turf, Suze.
Yes, Chad Summers.
So Chad Summers dropped out of school in 9th grade for a few reasons. First of all, he had undiagnosed ADHD and he found school rather hard to follow. But also because at home he had so many chores, like genuine cutting corn, chopping hay, splitting wood, like no joke kind of chores that had to be done daily. And he lived mainly with his grandparents and did everything that he could to avoid his stepfather, who was often violent. Just to give you a little picture of Chad Summers' background. According to the article in Popular Mechanics, Summers is shy but charismatic, and he seems haunted by demons, which he comes by naturally. Remember, the violent stepfather is part of it. But because he didn't finish school, Summers prides himself on being an autodidact, and he is obsessively that way, always learning. And when he gets interested in something, he throws himself into it completely. So his girlfriend, we'll call her Hope Bowser. Hope says when he gets his mind on something, that's all there is for a while. This was the case when Chad Summers went to his first rodeo and he got fixated on learning to ride a bull and started that very night. He didn't stop learning it until 8 years later when he had conquered it, like winning regional competitions for years. The same was true when he threw himself into learning to sing and play guitar. He worked relentlessly until he could perform at open mics and shows, and he entered a countrywide talent contest. He made the top 10. Obviously he feels a certain way about not having finished school.
Yeah.
But he's not an unintelligent person.
Clearly.
He's a very intelligent person. In the midst of all of these things that he was learning, he also suffered legal problems, an opioid addiction, a heart attack, a near fatal bout of blood poisoning. He is resilient. He is a resilient character. That much is quite apparent. So he grew up, as I said, in Central Ohio. And as a child, he was friends with the Bowser family. Hope Bowser, who I just mentioned, eventually became his girlfriend. But as kids, her family owned more than 300 acres of land. A farm, a home, a barn, bunkhouse, hay fields, all of it.
Central Ohio.
In Central Ohio.
Uh-huh.
And it sounds like their days were just idyllic and carefree, climbing trees and camping out and picking mushrooms, in general, just having the run of the land as kids. Back in the day, friends, back in the day, before we had so many screens in our lives.
But also, in addition to all those chores, I'm sure.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So eventually, when Hope's parents passed away, the Bowser land was divided up, and she and one of her brothers inherited 20 acres, a 20-acre parcel of land. And it features this steep wooded bluff and a creek. Over the years, Summers spent many, many days roaming that land, watching the birds and the animals, studying the trees, listening to the wind blow, all of it. He says, I've seen it flowered, I've seen it flooded, I've seen it frozen, I've seen it angry, I've seen it calm. Chad Summers seems like a very poetic guy, very connected to nature, honestly. So according to popular mechanics, whenever life turned venomous, as it often seemed to, these woods were his antidote. He says, I always told everybody there's something different about this place. You feel it more than you see it, he says. So let me cut to the summer of 2018. Chad Summers and Hope are yard sailing, and as they pick through items in an attic, Bowser picks up an old framed photograph of two mustached men taken in the local area. Hope was like, I feel like I know those men, like I know who they are. And Summers took a look and they both agreed. The men in the photo looked like Frank and Jesse James. And they had seen those men in like old Reader's Digest books about the Wild West, and they were pretty sure this was a photo of them in their local area.
Wow.
So they buy the photo for $15 and they start asking around, seeing if they could authenticate the photo. But everyone they talked to dismissed it because Jesse James and the James brothers had never been in Ohio. That is the official history. They were never there.
Okay.
But in his conversations, Summers encountered one collector with a very interesting nugget. Apparently, Jesse James, the famed outlaw, had been a high-ranking member of the Knights of the Golden Circle. Have you ever heard of the Knights of the Golden Circle, Suze?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Well, a side spark on all of that. I'm going to talk more about them, but I'm just like, this is what I knew. I had to share this spark. The Knights of the Golden Circle was a quasi-military secret society formed during the Civil War. That's not conspiracy theory. That's not made up. Like there's evidence of this little society club existing.
I believe you.
According to popular mechanics, the Knights of the Golden Circle opposed the abolitionist movement, and they sought to establish a new slaveholding state that encompassed the South and Mexico. And legend holds that its leaders amassed a fortune in gold and other precious metals, reportedly in hopes of funding a second civil war. So like at a certain point, they were like, we're losing this. We're not going to, but their eyes looked forward to, okay, so we're going to stash this cash. We're going to go underground. We're going to keep our movement going. Some historians claim that the KGC, the Knights of the Golden Circle, their stashes of loot remain hidden around the country. Some of them have been found and they weren't like enormous, but a lot of historians believe that there are still these stashes of gold that were the KGC's. According to a book called Rebel Gold, One Man's Quest to Crack the Code Behind the Secret Treasure of the Confederacy, it was written by Warren Gettler and Bob Brewer. It is about the pursuit of that treasure. According to them, the organization had a central strategy to maintain a powerful, hidden base of political military operations in the American Deep South, no matter the outcome of the Civil War itself, and with ample treasure to finance them. I'm going to come back to this spark in just a second, but let me say right here, just flat out, Jesse James was not a good man. Jesse James, a member of this society, he was not a good man. He has been glorified in our history books as an American outlaw. That part is known. But these other details, I wasn't exactly surprised by them, but I don't know if I hadn't been aware of them or.
I know that there's sort of a glorification that can
Yes.
surround like these bandits, these historical
Yes.
bandits.
Yes. There are people who get very caught up in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in fact, you know, that rugged individualism about like the Old West, he sort of personifies that. And I've never really been enamored by him or studied him.
Yeah.
But I'm aware a little bit, like that Brad Pitt film about him being killed by Robert Ford, Jesse James killed by the rebel Robert Ford or something like that. But the truth is, as I learned more, Jesse James was a murderer, a thief, a terrorist, and a white supremacist. Flat out.
I don't think I knew that.
I did not either.
Yeah.
Now, I might have been able to put two and two together had I thought more about Jesse James.
Right.
But I hadn't, frankly, given him a lot of thought. So this spark is not about glorifying him.
Isn't this all depicted in a very famous episode of the Brady Bunch?
Probably.
There's a very famous episode of the Brady Bunch called Bobby's Hero, where Bobby Brady is just obsessed with Jesse James. And then by the end, they reveal that Jesse James was actually not a good guy. So I feel like this episode of the Spark File is a hot new take on that episode of the Brady Bunch.
It's all about the Brady Bunch. You know, what's funny is that I totally remember that episode. And maybe that was part of like genuinely not ever taking on Jesse James as a hero in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just wanted to make clear this intrigue about his gold is about the treasure hunt. That's what sparks me, not about glorifying the person.
White supremacist.
He was from a slave-owning family who fought and killed in an effort to prevent emancipation. So
what a guy.
Yeah, none of this is intended to glorify the man, Jesse James. But I am excited by the prospect of uncovering some truths and maybe even dispelling some legends. So I want to pause and offer up one of the, like, what do we make of it? It's right here in the middle of this spark. Friends, the Knights of the Golden Circle, they wanted to maintain a military and political power no matter the outcome of the Civil War, and they wanted to fund a second Civil War. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Looking where we are now, why isn't a sequel to National Treasure being made yet? We are primed and ready for a movie or a series about a secret society that existed before and during the Civil War. When the war was lost, they went underground. They hid their money until it was time to rise up again and create another Civil War, never having changed their belief system and their dedication to making a slave state exist in this country. So it's not a big leap of imagination here to cut to what if 150 years later, they've come to fight their war again. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
And the North we have to defend our freedoms, and we have to prevail again. We have to double down on freedom and equality for all. I leave it with you, readers. Write that story, please. Listeners, write it. I need it. I'm of half of mind to write it myself because I'm very, I have so many thoughts about this, but also I'm like, I'm probably not the most qualified to write this. So someone take it and run with it.
There are people that I feel like are very neurologically suited for an exercise like this, a creative exercise. It freaks me out, just the thought, the possibility of it.
Yeah.
And so the thought of living with that material long enough to write something like that.
That's right.
Would be the thing that would bottleneck me.
You're like, I don't want to fixate my mind on that for so long.
Ooh. It's rough. It scares me.
But I think the key to it is fixing your mind on the positive outcome, because we would tell the story where they absolutely don't succeed. The Knights of the Golden Circle are squashed, diminished, and ended forever.
It's giving me strong Tarantino vibes. Just that sort of Inglorious Bastards where it's sort of like bad guys are going down.
That's right.
Bad guys are going down. Yeah.
So, okay, take that and run with it. But back to Chad Summers. So Summers remembered hearing about a local gold mine when he was a kid. And again, this is from the article. His grandfather had run a logging operation, and at times he would bring young Chad Summers along. And Summers recalled a very specific episode from one such outing. His grandfather was operating his knuckle boom. I say that like I know what a knuckle boom is. He was operating his knuckle boom. And Chad was watching when a woman on a porch nearby called over to him. And she said, "Keep your eyes open," because Jesse James had buried gold there in the 1800s and nobody had found the treasure. It was right across the road from Hope Bowser's property. And he recollects this now. He's like, whoa, wait a minute. I remember this woman saying that when I was younger. He admitted that the idea was far-fetched. It was unlikely that a treasure was there. And even if it was unlikely that he could find it. He says he had no dreams about like being a treasure hunter. And yet his mind just would not let it go.
That's the kind of mind he has.
That's right. It just kept coming back. And Hope, his girlfriend, was dubious, but she seemed to have enough evidence in his fixations to believe in him. So she said, Chad thinks differently than most people. He sees things that other people look at and don't see. So one day, Chad is roaming the Bowser's land, those 20 acres. He's just going for a long walk to clear his mind about things. And according to the article, after roaming around for a while, he'd taken a break to smoke a cigarette on this slender ledge hard up against this huge old birch tree situated about 2/3 of the way down this steep, several 100-foot bluff.
Wow.
He had always noticed this particular tree. Its base sort of split off into 3 large limbs that formed kind of a cockeyed W. And it stood largely alone. The article said as if it had bought out its neighbors, which I thought was cute. But like it was like kind of all by itself. So relaxing there, he drifted into kind of a trance, a daydream in the way that he explains it. And in the midst of it, he looked over and saw Jesse James sitting next to him. This is sort of in a half dream state he's in. The Jesse James of Old West lore, the notorious bank and train robber. Summers had been thinking a lot about James, obviously, since that photograph. Here he was, wearing a round-brimmed duster, flicking ashes from a cigar. And Jesse James says, "This is where I'm going to bury it. This is where I'm going to bury the biggest treasure I ever buried in my life." And then he got up and walked off, and Summers woke up. He could hear the creek gurgling below, and into the breeze, he said, "This is where I'll dig. This is where I'll dig." And immediately started digging. That day, in that moment, with his bare hands.
Oh my God. He got to get that knuckle boom from his granddad.
Need a knuckle boom.
Need a knuckle boom. Yeah.
This is probably where I should stop and tell you about the map. The map. Summers finds a photo of a map online. That map was hand-drawn and supposedly showed the location of large underground Confederate depository in Tennessee on an old battle site. Or at least that's what the handwritten top of the map appears to say. The words on the top of the map in like scratchy handwriting are an 1862-63 battle site. But Summers, you know the way he sees things differently? He notices that the lettering of the word battle was written so that it could read 1-3. You know how like a B,
Yeah.
if you make the line and then they don't touch. 1-3-OHIO. Because the 2 T's look connected. They look like an H.
13 Ohio.
13 Ohio. With the 13 referring to Ohio Route 13.
This is giving me treasure hunt so hard.
Right? Or maybe it was a KGC symbol. And if he turned the map sideways, the way they wrote the word Nashville, now looked like Zanesville.
Zanesville, Ohio, baby.
There you go. You know where that is?
I know exactly where that is. And I remember visiting Zanesville, Ohio, and there's a very famous civil rights activist and feminist named Bella Abzug. And I feel like I remember standing in front of a glass case, and there was one of her famous hats in the case.
Oh, cool.
But
Very cool.
I've always associated that with Zanesville, Ohio. So I think I have been to Zanesville.
Well, I think Zanesville's got some other things going on too. So he pulled up this Google Earth image of Bowser's property and laid it alongside this map. And the features of the land lined up exactly. Now, of course, you know, when that map was made, they're just doing like trees, ledges, streams, etc. Like they're like the features of the land, basically. They line up with this map, and some of the symbols on the map match symbols that he had seen carved into trees on the Bowser property. The symbols include like a little turtle, a wolf, the letters JJ. Part of me at this point is like, we're pulling things out of thin air here, right? Like the skeptical part of me.
She's grasping at straws.
Yeah, like when people today are working on conspiracy theories and they're like, if you turn the 7 sideways, it looks like an L.
Yeah.
But the other part of me is like, you know, if the symbols on the trees are aligning, this is of interest. I would be into like finding out more. So he had another tool in his arsenal. He had a copy of that book, Rebel Gold. And as he searched the woods, he found the symbols on the trees, the hearts, the turkey tracks, the turtles. They were identical to the ones described by the authors in the book. So these were actual symbols used by the Knights of the Golden Circle. For what? We don't know. But they don't just exist here in Ohio. Like they're all over the country.
Okay.
So he's not making that up, right? It seemed a little undeniable that there was something there and they needed to investigate further. So on the day that Chad Summers had the vision of Jesse James saying, this is where I'll bury it, he hadn't brought a shovel with him or anything. He was just going for a walk. But there he was, energized by the vision, and he starts digging with his bare hands, with sticks, anything he can find. And he doesn't stop until the hole is like 3 feet deep. He realizes, of course, that he would look like an insane person if anyone happened to come upon him digging like this, but he couldn't stop. And in retrospect, he says, like, he had always noticed this particular tree. Like I said, it was like that W, stood kind of by itself. And so he'd always felt like there was something kind of special about this spot. He realizes, of course, he's going to need a shovel. He returns with one. And according to Popular Mechanics, within a day or so, the hole was more than 6 feet deep. He brought an extension ladder in and a generator to run light down there so that he could get even further down. At around 10 feet down, he was too deep to like keep tossing out the dirt.
Yeah, that's serious work.
That's serious work.
Have you tried to dig a hole lately? It is really hard.
It's really hard. Now, this land here seemed to be soft.
Okay.
Like he says that, like it wasn't.
Still.
Yeah.
Ooh.
But still 10 feet, you're in way over your head. And yeah, how are you getting the dirt out that you're shoveling?
Gotta get a knuckle boom.
So he doesn't get a knuckle boom, but he does get a bucket, and he would fill it, climb up, haul it out, dump it, and repeat just over and over again. He uses this grindingly slow method until he reaches 15 feet, then 20 feet.
Oh my God.
And then after a month, he maxed out at 25 feet because that's as long as the extension ladder was. While he's digging, he finds artifacts like an old harmonica, a cigar butt made from a single leaf of tobacco, both suggestive that someone had been there many, many decades ago. Eventually, he gets to 30 feet down in the hole. His shovel gave off a metallic ting when he hits something. Smooth, hard, blue-gray surface. It appeared to be like the top of a vault, but he couldn't penetrate it with his shovel. And every drill bit that he tried became stuck.
Wow.
So around this time, Summer starts talking to friends, and some offered to help, but his girlfriend was like, ixnay on the talking about what the hell you're doing, because people think you're nuts. And she said, like, people were ridiculing him and laughing at him. So she was like, can we just keep this a little quieter, please? So at this point, he has a hole in the ground 30 feet deep. He's got a ladder to get him in and out of it. He's got it lit up. And he's starting to wonder about the safety of it, honestly. Like the whole thing, it could cave in on him.
You think?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But remember, when Chad Summers gets something in his mind, it's in his mind.
I know, but if just like a little bit of like the dirt starts to cave in, you're 30 feet underground.
30 feet underground. And the fact that the ground was relatively soft, that was a great thing for him digging it out. But some rainfall, like all it would take is some rainfall, that would not work in his favor.
That is insane.
So he's determined to move forward, but before he can, like, reality hits him hard. Like the best way to say this is like Summers seems like he lived hand to mouth.
Well, if he has enough time to dig a hole 30 feet deep.
He's obviously not gainfully employed.
I don't think so. I don't think he's using all his vacation days for that.
He is not. So he and his girlfriend needed to make money, and they got hired to remodel some homes in Columbus, Ohio, which is about an hour away. So they relocated for the time being to be closer to the work, and he had to leave the hole. He needed the job, and it was agonizing to leave the hole there, but he really didn't have a choice. So he tarps it up, but it was definitely some real unfinished business here.
Sure.
He had just struck the metal at the bottom of the hole. So it was a bit crazy making that he had to leave the project and abandon it for now.
I just want to say, like, if indeed that was metal 30 feet down, not a rock, not naturally occurring ore, that is weird.
It's weird, right?
Yeah.
It's weird. Let me tell you some more. So things got a little bit rough for Summers and Hope, his girlfriend at this point. They worked for a year or more, a year in Columbus. It's now 2021. Their employer owed them thousands of dollars, kept saying he'd make good after the next job and the next job. And then he stiffed them completely. He just took off and left them empty-handed.
During the pandemic. Oh my God.
So Summers and Bowers couldn't pay their rent. They had to forfeit like a few storage units worth of things because they couldn't pay for the storage units. They were really in a tough place. And the only positive thing was that losing that job meant that he could get back to his Jesse James project. So back at the dig site, the hole had partially collapsed. He started to get back down in there, but I don't know, time had passed and he just felt like, God, this has gotten a little bit sketchier than he remembered in terms of safety. But he did get back down there. And when he looked around, he noticed that some rocks had shifted and it revealed an opening like a shaft leading into the hillside. Again, too dangerous to go exploring there without help. So I don't think I mentioned that those maps that he's looking at, they also describe these tunnels, these underground tunnels.
Oh, shit.
You know, hiding places, etc. So around this time, Chad Summers happened to be watching the show on History Channel called Beyond Oak Island, which, if you're not familiar with it, is about lost treasure on Oak Island. And it features a man named Warren Gettler. He's a renowned treasure hunter, among other things, and co-author of that book I mentioned, Rebel Gold. So Summers decided to reach out. He wrote to Gettler on Facebook, and he said, according to Popular Mechanics, he wrote, "We need to have a conversation concerning certain KGC maps and what I have discovered here, like a concrete vault 30 feet in the ground, marked by a giant arrow at the bottom of a giant J, where an alleged gold mine once was. Sound interesting enough for you?" He continued on in the email, "If you want the story exclusive, we can talk. I'm about to show the world the end of a 200-year-old treasure hunt." He's pretty savvy too in the way that
Clickbaity. Yeah.
yeah. When Gettler called him an hour later, his first question was, how far are you from Zanesville?
What?
His book had documented a Zanesville connection with Jesse James.
Oh.
And Summers said, I'm about 15 miles away, Mr. Gettler. And Gettler replied, call me Warren, and I'm coming.
So Warren Gettler had documented that Jesse James and maybe his brother Frank had been in Ohio.
That's right. That's right.
Wow.
But see, I'll get into this a little more, but if you believe that Robert Ford killed Jesse James, which is what the history books say, then there is no Ohio chapter. But other people say Jesse James faked his death and then went to Ohio and did all of these things. So even in Jesse James historians, you've got a split in beliefs. But like I said, Warren Gettler is a journalist. He is a geophysics enthusiast and the co-author of the book Rebel Gold. He is a longtime student of the Knights of the Golden Circle history. So that book, Rebel Gold, was published by Simon & Schuster in 2003. And the popularity of that book and his depth of knowledge of the subject matter actually led to him scoring a consultant role for the film National Treasure, Book of Secrets, which I mentioned earlier.
Oh, shit. I haven't seen any of those movies. Have you
Oh
seen
my
those
gosh, Suze. Are you kidding?
I think I auditioned for one of them. I did not book it.
And then you're like, I'm going to hold this grudge and never watch them.
No, I was like, I don't think that movie was for me. Is it for me?
I think they are super fun. I think they're fun. And the way they weave in history, some true, some question mark. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know. I find them to be delightful in certain ways. Yeah.
So your man, Warren Gettler, consulted
on that.
On one of those films.
That's right. And it's time for another one. It really is. So that book and those movies elevated his profile, and he kind of became the go-to guy for not only the treasure hunting community, but the very specific niche group of people who focus their attention specifically on the Knights of the Golden Circle's treasure. So he has personally investigated several sites purportedly connected to this Confederate organization, including one on public land in Pennsylvania, where Gettler says the FBI was allowed by a federal court to dig, largely based on his research. And things get complicated, right? So when the government got involved and then people didn't really get to see all the results or the outcome of that dig, et cetera.
Oh, so we don't know. They may have uncovered something that...
I'm talking about this previous dig in Pennsylvania.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about
yeah.
too.
Oh, yeah. We don't
know.
We don't know.
Well, that's unsatisfying.
Very, very unsatisfying. And like I said, like I think he's been responsible for other small, just small meaning like $100,000 worth of gold, which is not small. But, you know, they have found these little caches. But everyone believes there is more. But Summers and this site are very different because it's on private property. And his girlfriend and her brother own the property, which means that no government agencies even need to be involved or contacted in any way.
Huh.
And the hope is that after tests confirm that something is in fact here, a crew will come in to dig it up. Now, Gettler calls his friend Brad Richards, who is a history teacher whose expertise in the 19th century American help him land a role on the History Channel show, The Curse of the Civil War Gold.
Yeah.
So these two guys know a lot about this particular topic. So cut to March 2022, Gettler visits the Bowser property in hopes of getting down into that hole and identifying and recovering what they all hope and believe to be KGC gold. He's going to use his geophysical equipment to do a ground scan. Now, getting to the site, Suze, involves driving several miles of pavement past crumbling barns, front yards full of like graveyards of old cars.
Sure.
It turns to gravel. There's a road closed sign. You continue past all of that. You keep driving until you pull into a field. The last half mile from there, you have to go on foot and descending this wooded slope. According to Gettler, he believes Jesse James chose this site for its natural attributes. There is a creek of water, so you got water there. There are birch trees, which live a long time and are also soft enough to carve clues into. And at that time, there was a nearby stagecoach station. From the top of this bluff, he could keep a lookout over the whole location without giving the exact location away. So there's a lot of pluses as to why someone might choose this location to do what they did. Now, at various points in this adventure, media have been allowed in, which is how Popular Mechanics and others got a firsthand view of all of this. In fact, Gettler even shows them a series of these birch trees on the property that he says proved Jesse James's activities did in fact happen there. One carving is a very simple drawing of a man's face with a hat on it, and it is supposedly representative of a little self-portrait of James, rudimentary, self-portrait of James, and a blueprint of the tunnel system, which begins just 100 yards away where the treasure is.
Wow.
So other trees show the carvings, like I said before, the turkey tracks, rabbits, hearts, other symbols. Gettler believes he saw one tree with the carving Jesse W. James and the year 1882. If it was carved by Jesse James himself, that would have been proof that he did not, in fact, die at the hands of Robert Ford in 1882, as has been recorded in the history books. It would mean that the long-told story of Jesse James faking his own death so that he could carry out his missions of hiding gold for the Confederacy were true. The thing is, it's really easy to write these things off, but according to Gettler, it gets more complex when there's a pattern like recognition around the country, meaning the symbols found here match imagery found in Arkansas, Illinois, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and it matches the KGC records that exist in the National Archives. Like, it's not someone's fantasy. Those things exist. That documentation exists. They had a vast, complex, rigorous system of communication that really, that's not up for dispute. Like, we know that to be true. So long story short, they do this geophysical reading. They bring in crazy equipment, metal detectors. They use heat maps to determine the size and shape of whatever is in the ground there. And sure enough, they confirm there is something about 10 to 20 feet below the surface. It's 8 feet wide and 3 feet deep. And although they cannot confirm that it is gold, they can confirm there is a shit ton of metal in there.
Oh my God.
What kind of metal? We do not know. And it is showing up in the exact place where that hand-drawn map says it would be.
Oh my God.
So they rule out other possibilities. There are no naturally occurring metals in the ground here. It's not a location where scrap metal is likely to have been buried for any reason. And they all really feel we are onto something. But everyone except Chad Summers has a job that they need to get back to. So they have to leave it there on that particular trip. But they keep talking, and Gettler plans another trip in the near future. But in the meantime, Summers continues to look for evidence or proof that Jesse James actually was in Ohio. And he turns up a few things. They can be disputed, but here are a few things he turns up. There are letters, about 20 letters from Jesse James III, also known as Orvis Lee Hawk. In one of those letters from 1948, he writes about Zanesville and, quote, your lookout at W, which they believe is a reference to the W-shaped tree. And in another letter, he wrote, quote, I do know that we are on track at W. Now, also in 1948, in newspaper articles from the Zanesville Signal, they wrote about local kinfolk who claimed Jesse James had once lived here. And they wrote that in 1948. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
these sorts of things. Now, some people are like, well, that could have just been like local gossip being reported on a slow news day. But the next year, they wrote a bigger feature about how a whole bunch of James's relatives, including Hawk and Roscoe James, which was James's nephew, had converged on the area looking for treasure. So they would have been looking for his grandfather's treasure in 1948. And here again, in this story, written in 1948, James had faked his death and then gone to Ohio in 1882, posing as a man named J. Frank Dalton, a lightning rod salesman. In that article, they wrote, "The old fellow who claims to be Jesse James has supplied his friends here with a map which is supposed to lead them to a spot near Zanesville where he buried $1.5 million worth of gold bullion," the story says. The team recovered only an empty metal box, but reported locating many strange-looking marks on tree trunks just where Jesse said we'd find them. And, according to Popular Mechanics, Hope took this writer to meet a woman named Lavinia Nethers, who's 86 years old now. She has lived in the area her entire life. She recalls being told that her husband's great-great-grandmother provided Jesse James with meals and laundry service when he passed through the area. One day, she informed Jesse that she was facing bankruptcy. She told him that the bank was going to foreclose on her farm the next day, and so she wouldn't be able to work for him anymore. According to this family legend, Jesse James said, "Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it." He came back the next morning and he had paid the money for her foreclosure.
Oh.
She paid off the loan. And the next day, the bank was robbed. So Jesse got his money back. So these are like local stories that have been handed down. You can't really plant those after the fact. Those are people saying like, look, I can't verify it, but I know that something's gone on here. So while everyone else is gone, Summers used a camera on a snake to get into some of the tunnels and spaces and took really grainy photographs. They show man-made walls, and in some of them, you can see what appear to be gold bars, but you can't be sure. It's a grainy photograph from a little snake camera. But another visit comes. They bring big equipment.
Bring on the knuckle booms.
Yeah, I don't think it's a knuckle boom.
Damn it.
I want it to be. I wish I could fold that back into this story.
We'll get
I think
there.
maybe our technology has evolved beyond knuckle booms, maybe. So they brought some other things. They brought an excavator, and this is a pretty dangerous slope that they're working on.
Yeah.
You know, there are on and off moments this whole time. It's going to work. It's not going to work. Try something else. Look for another way, and on and on. Finally, everything is ready to go with this excavation. At the very last second, two of Hope Bowser's siblings arrive to question the excavation and ask that the project come to a halt until they can clarify whether Hope's brother, the co-owner of the land, has signed off on this dig. Now, Suze, when I read that, I thought, are you kidding me?
Oh my God.
You've gotten this far and that detail isn't sorted out?
But that's like it is. This is a great spark for a screenplay.
It is, right?
Yes.
I'm on a silver platter right here.
On a silver frickin' platter.
You know, if you want to write it, just email us. I'll send you this article.
There are Chads and Karens that get nuts when like a shopping cart isn't properly returned in a parking lot. So of course there are people, when you introduce the possibility of a man-made room 30 feet underground filled with gold bars, yeah, people would go crazy.
Which doesn't surprise me, but just why didn't it happen earlier? Because this is not the first trip that Gettler and those guys have been there. Like, it's crazy.
It's the siblings or cousins? Who is it? Siblings?
Two other siblings come to make sure that the sibling that is the co-owner of this property has signed off. I mean, all of this got me thinking about story structure. I
Oh,
love to think about this. And we've talked about this before, but one of the most challenging things for writers to do is create conflict and obstacles that really put their hero through the ringer.
and then the siblings roll into town.
Exactly. And then the
Yes.
siblings. So in this story, we have external conflict of the land itself and the challenges it poses, internal conflict of self-doubt. Am I crazy or is this something real? Now we have interpersonal conflict. These are family members that are going to stand in the way of this project. So in this moment, they have to call it all off again until the family gets it sorted.
Oh my God.
So the project hits another roadblock. Again, the only person who doesn't depart after each one of these incursions is Chad Summers.
Your boy Chad.
That's right. And while everyone is away, he continues armed with his shovel and he just can't help himself. He keeps probing. He finds several different openings to what seem like more tunnels. He takes photographs with the snake cam. He finds artifacts like a 38 special bullet, which might date back to the 1920s, a whiskey barrel, a bracelet, metal urns, a bone fragment, and this freaking huge vault chamber. So right about this time, wouldn't you know, one more thing. Chad Summers and Hope break up.
No. Oh no. This is bad.
I know this is bad.
This is the worst.
The strain of all of this has done such a number on their relationship. They cannot move forward.
Oh no.
The enormity of it all, not knowing how to proceed. She wants him to get a job. He feels like this is his job. It just becomes too much to bear. So they break up.
On a silver platter. I'm telling you, on a silver platter.
Right? I mean, it would write itself. So when his truck breaks down, he doesn't have the $2,500 it'll take to fix it.
Amazing.
He lives in a tent or a tarp shelter that he made by the dig site.
Yeah, I was going to say, does he live down in that hole?
Almost. He lives right beside
It's
it.
got electricity. It's got a good tarp.
Right? He's there with no vehicle, no cell service on his phone. He said in this article, at the age of 43, here I sit, homeless, no vehicle, in worse shape now than I was when this project started.
You know what that sounds like?
What?
It sounds like the dark night of the soul before things take a turn.
Well, it gets darker before the dawn, Susan. This gets interesting to me in terms of story development because this is all about how your main character responds to things. And like it or not, as much as we may love our main character, sometimes they don't respond in the best way.
Uh-huh.
Like sometimes their back is up against the wall and they respond in ways that don't benefit themselves, right? People often act against their own best interest. It's frustrating, but it's true.
What's he do?
Well, in this case, according to popular mechanics, he has responded to the feel of the wall on his back by pushing everyone else away. He lashes out at Gettler repeatedly. Gettler, this guy who has come to help him.
He's a complicated soul. He was
He
raised
is.
with violence and,
And he's under pressure.
Yeah.
So he lashes out at Gettler over an array of issues. He believes that Gettler has, at times, taken credit for his discoveries and exerted undue control over the project. For months, they were locked in a disagreement over a fee that they would be paid by a TV production company. Most of all, Summers is upset that Gettler is choosing a, quote, conventional livelihood over working in the dirt alongside him, saying that he lacks the grit or determination or, let me put it plainly, the hunger. Now, that doesn't really seem fair because Gettler has invested a lot into the project. He's not getting paid. He's investing his own money and his own time and his own resources and his own connections to TV companies and production companies. And now he has to help Summers keep his shit together, frankly. And if that doesn't also describe the creative process and collaborations, I don't know what does, right? You have to tend to the relationship as much as you tend to the project itself, so that you don't get like 3/4 of the way through it only to have the pack eat its own.
Mm-hmm.
And that can happen just because of stress and because people don't know what's happening inside of them and they don't know how to handle it.
Plus the high stakes of a room full of gold bars.
A room full of gold bars.
The possibility of success and having when you haven't had your whole life.
That's right. I'm sure he's living in fear that it's going to get scooped up and taken away from him.
Oh, yeah. Especially now that he's broken up with
Broken
Hope.
up with Hope.
Oh, come on. Broken up with Hope. Her name is Hope, for God's sakes.
Her name is Hope. Friends.
This damn screenplay writes itself.
He has dug himself a hole.
Oh, my God.
And now must get out of it. Can we talk about metaphors? People, please, someone write us and tell us that you're writing the screenplay.
I'm dying to know.
Okay. So Gettler and Summers eventually move through this, possibly buoyed by their shared passion for this project. I mean, if this really is Jesse James's gold, or the Knights of the Golden Circle's gold, if they prove that Jesse James really did fake his death, they would be cracking open 200-year-old history here.
Yeah.
Like legit.
Yeah.
In 2022, Summers and Gettler signed on with Mark Wahlberg's production company to pitch a television series that will record the discovery.
Okay.
But in order for it to come to fruition, they need a network or a streaming platform to agree to fund it. So in the meantime, Summers describes the situation as in limbo. He is entirely consumed by and fixated on the whole. The whole and his life are in limbo, right? This is the metaphor. This is your main character. They dug their own hole. They are stuck in it now. And the big question is whether or not they're going to climb out of it. Dun, dun, dun.
Is that where we're leaving it?
Popular Mechanics summed up the article by saying, something is down there. There is too much scientific evidence now. You cannot deny it. The evidence is there. And the truth about what lies inside that Ohio hillside will emerge possibly later this year. Until then, Summers promises to suppress his urge to claw deeper into the earth, but in every other way, he'll remain down in that hole until the last shovelful of dirt has been turned over.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding you. I'm sorry to leave it there.
My God. I feel like we're going to get like some Forrest Fenn treasure updates.
Yes.
Yeah.
And by the way, sidebar on that, I read that book that the guy wrote about the treasure hunt and the people who did Forrest Fenn's treasure hunt and who found it. I read the whole book, Suze. I was so excited I was going to spark you back. And I was literally like, there is not enough Sparky stuff here to spark you back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was disappointed.
The fact of the matter is, we love the magic trick.
Yes.
We love the illusion. And once we know, if it's revealed to us how it's done,
yeah,
it's like, oh.
Oh, well, I should have said that. This book didn't get to tell that story. I'm sure there's still a story coming someday because the winner wants to be anonymous. Or not the winner, the person who found that wants to be anonymous. So they may or may not ever want to reveal how, in fact, they cracked the code. But that's not the case here. Summers, Gettler, all these people are very accustomed to eyes on this project. They invited media in along the way.
How much do you want to bet like Chad Summers has thought about just fucking throwing some Bugs Bunny, Wile E. Coyote dynamite down that hole to like blow a hole in whatever that thing is?
I'm sure he's obsessed with it.
Oh my God. I'm obsessed with it, Chad.
I'm sure of it. How do you not like stand on top of this vault being like, I must get in here?
Oh my God.
So I'm fascinated.
I just want to give it up for the person who wrote that story.
And may I say this? I did not tell the story in as good a way as David Howard did, because I wanted to just get on here and read you that article.
Absolutely.
Because it was just like,
so
well, this is amazing. Well done, David Howard. But he doesn't tell it in a chronological way.
Oh, yeah.
It's really interesting. He keeps popping back and forth. And I tried to like parse the information so we understood who we're talking about and go in order. But David, it's very entertaining. And if David Howard doesn't have it's probably David Howard you'd need to get the screenplay rights to if you wanted to follow his article. But the thing that makes it interesting, Suze, is that, like I said, they invited lots of media in. So other media wrote the equivalent of this story,
but not as well,
with different writers in different ways as well. So you could maybe get your hands on the rights of any one of those stories.
Or you got to get some life rights from Chad Summers. So many what do we make of it's on this one, in addition to just like a smoking hot screenplay. It took everything within my power not to interrupt you at several occasions, because as you told the story, I was like, oh, that's like It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. The W trees, that's a feature of that movie. There's a There Will Be Blood element to Chad being down in that hole and digging that stuff up. I'm curious, who do you like for casting in the role of Chad and Hope? Who are you picturing?
You know what? I didn't even get that far, Suze.
How about like Austin Butler? He might be a little young because Chad is in his 40s by the time.
Chad's now 44.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean,
a Tom Hardy or
could be a Brad Pitt.
Brad's a little bit older. I think Brad could be Gettler.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know what Gettler looks like, but he could be. He's got that Indiana Jones, like, I've been through all of this. I know.
How about Julia Garner for Hope Bowser?
Well, also young, I think.
Well,
maybe
yeah, that's how it goes in Hollywood. This is so good.
Yes.
Another what do we make
She
of it?
would be amazing.
I think I'm going to get Nathan a subscription to Popular Mechanics for his birthday.
I mean, if the articles are this good.
And it's got all of that mechanical stuff, which he loves.
Yeah.
Because that's his special interest. Laura, what a spark.
Oh, I'm so happy you like it.
What a cliffhanger. Holy fucking shit.
And maybe we'll all be watching the show when it comes on. Hopefully Netflix or someone picks it up.
And also, I forgot the last what do we make of it? My new punk band, Knuckle Boom. I guess that's it.
Can we be the Knuckle Boomers?
Yes. Yes. Maybe the Knuckle Boomers are our fans. How about that?
Oh.
The band is Knuckle Boom.
Yeah. Okay.
Looks great on a t-shirt. Knuckle Boomers are the fans. It's going to be hot.
Love it.
This episode of The Spark File was made on the lands of the Lenape people. And as always, we hope this put another bunch of sparks in your file. Come on. If there's a spark you'd like us to explore, or if you'd like to learn more about how to coach with us to bring your creative ideas to life, email us at thesparkfile@gmail.com or submit it through our website, thesparkfile.com.
We will even happily take your feedback, but you know the price of admission. First, you have to share a creative risk that you have taken recently.
You can follow us on social at The Spark File and be sure to subscribe, rate, and 5-star review this podcast. It really does help other listeners to find us. Also, if you liked this podcast, we hope you'll share it with people that you love. And if you didn't like it, we invite you to just dig a 30-foot hole into the earth.
Put your feelings down in there.
Take an extension cord. Put your feelings down in there. Get yourself a good tarp to keep the rain off of you.
On the other hand, if something lights you up and gets your creative sparks flying, we are writing you a forever permission slip to make that thing that's been knocking at your door. It's your turn to take that spark and fan it into a flame.
You know, you got to take it
and make it.
Put your feelings down there in that hole.
Way down there, 30 feet down.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.